I want to apologize, Ambassador Gabriel Rodriguez, because I think there's some other things that he's taking care of. And I also apologize for not having Dr. Juan Carlos Castilla's name tag there. But I think Gabriel doesn't, Gabriel, yeah, would you like to be an ambassador for today? That's right, that's right. Okay, yes, please, Harry, he has some information to tell.
IPMEN is a fascinating organisation, and Peter is controlling all of this via mental telepathy from up the front here. So what we're seeing is, at this stage, a web page, and I'll send you all details of how to put your photographs on it. So any images you take of this conference that you really like, there is an email address that Peter and Angel have set up, and you can download your photographs and they will appear here. And then when we switch over on the computer, you will actually be able to see the live web streaming that's happening from that camera down the back. So they're just two things that are happening. So people that aren't here physically can watch us in real time and hear us in real time, or look at all our photographs.
Well, now I would like to invite Nemani Drova, Ministry of Education from Fiji. Mr. Drova is the Acting Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Education of Fiji. Mr. Drova's presence in Chile for IPMEN 2012 is significant because he had a key role in the 2010 IPMEN conference in Fiji. On the local level, after Mr. Drova's participation in the IPMEN conference, the Fiji government supported the goals of IPMEN with a commitment to include marine education into Fiji's school curriculum. So please, Mr. Drova and Sylvia.
Sorry, Mr. Drova. Yes, please. Thank you. Just explaining a little bit about the procedure here. We will have about a 10-minute presentation by each one of the people on our round table. And basically, the idea is to give a little bit of their own experience in their own home countries about marine education from their perspectives and experiences. And then we will see if we have some questions from the audience, and a couple of questions, and then we'll have a second round of presentations, basically looking towards the dream, how you, the international delegates, somehow see the opportunity and possibility for this jumpstart of marine education here in Chile and also in Latin America, and what are some of the basic steps to follow to make the dream come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pinto, Dr. Castilla, the Chilean organizers of this IPMEN conference, my colleagues. It's indeed a great honor for me to stand up here for the next 10 minutes or so, just to give you what is happening in Fiji since July the 9th or the 10th, 2010, when you were at the outrigger on the lagoon out there in Fiji with this wonderful IPMEN conference that happened there. Just on reflection, I actually took a bus ride from Suva to Nandi and spent about 10 minutes at the conference center, the outrigger on the lagoon, and I was thinking about all of you then. And now I'm in Chile, and it's been wonderful, particularly from Dr. Castillo's presentation of the concept of Chile is the sea. Fiji, I suppose, is also the sea is right in the middle of the ocean, just like Easter Island. There's more sea than land, and my thinking is that we should be concentrating more on the sea than the little piece of land that we have. Because like Chile, we have that 200 economic zone that we should be able to protect and exploit sustainably. So, ladies and gentlemen, just my reflection on the 9th of July 2010, there was a press release that was done by Sylvia Spalding, and part of the press release was that on the local level, the Fiji government supported the goals of IPMEN with a commitment to include marine education into Fiji school curriculum. Mr. Nemanian Robert, that's me, Fiji Ministry of Education's Curriculum and Development Unit Director, said he would write a proposal to the Minister, Mr. Mbole, before November 2010 to introduce marine science as an academic subject in Fiji's secondary school. He is hopeful that the Ministry will embrace the idea and allow a cabinet paper to be written with the development of relevant curriculum by 2011. Fiji currently does not include marine education in its primary and secondary curriculum, although most of the students come from coastal villages or area connected to them. We are very much part of the sea, as I've said, and like we were told this morning by Ambassador Gabriel, there is always a dream, and no, we make the sea a little bit smaller and the reality a little bit bigger. So, ladies and gentlemen, what has happened, I actually presented a paper to our minister on the 16th of August 2010. The topic of that paper was marine studies in Fiji curriculum. The purpose, to create awareness of the Honorable Minister and the senior staff about the importance of marine studies in Fiji, to highlight how marine studies is covered in the various curricula subjects in Fiji now. We actually have marine studies included in part of our biology, basic science, geography, and elementary science in the primary schools. As a background to that paper, I included the fact that the Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean in the world, covering 179.7 million kilometers, 69.4 million square miles, about 1/3 of the Earth's surface. In short, we have more sea than land in the Pacific, of course, as we heard this morning. This wonderful country is part of that sea. I highlighted the case of Tuvalu Island study as an example of the possible benefit of marine studies in the curriculum in Fiji. A research that was done by one Professor Hajime Kayane. Sasake-san would know this gentleman, of course. Those of you who are very committed to these marine studies. He's a very famous professor from Japan. He was sponsored by JICA to study Tuvalu. Tuvalu, as most of you are aware of, it's a coral island, only 1 or 2 meters, even less than 1 meter above the sea. If the sea continues to rise, Tuvalu will surely become part of the sea. It will be under the sea. And that's when Professor Kayane was saying that you can actually use the natural processes. Tuvalu was created through the natural process about 2,000 years ago by sand-making material called forum, as those of you who are experts in this area know. And he's saying that there is in one particular island, there's an airstrip right in the middle, built during the World War II, and that airstrip is actually spoiling the natural processes. I don't know how far it's gone, but it's a fascinating study on Coral Island, and I give this an example that it would be a possible benefit. The current situation, that was what I included. Marine studies is offered only as part of various subjects, I said, and we have a new marine studies vocational course which is currently being piloted in one island school called Wunisea Secondary School. The detail of this paper is actually with Dr. Harry. You can get it from there. I won't cover everything because I've got only about 5 or so minutes. So I told the minister that, and the senior staff that the marine studies can be offered as optional subjects for 2-year in Form 3 and Form 4 certificate. What my dream was and still is that we study marine studies as a subject, not as part of biology or any other subject. And marine study to be offered at Form 3 and Form 4, that's year 9 and year 10. And then marine studies to be offered as separate subject also in year 11 and year 12. And another marine studies to be offered as a separate subject in year 13. And the scenario 2, that's the most realistic one, given the situation we have. The marine studies be studied as part of other subjects, as is, but we consolidate. I met my friend from LA, Mark, who's sitting there in front of me, saying that he will give me some of the things that's happening in California, where they start studying. They have a much more advanced curriculum, and I thank him for that. The recommendation that was made was that whichever scenario approved by the minister would be prudent to start the implementation in 2012. Because of the fact that in 2011, the curriculum development unit was really loaded with so much new initiative. There were over 30 new initiatives that's happening in the Ministry of Education. And one of those was the fact that we abolished 3 external examinations, and we are now concentrating on a more formative assessment. I think most of the world is moving towards more formative assessment from the current, what we used to, summative assessment, where we study and then we sit for external exams after 1 or 2 years. And I also recommended to the minister that the senior education officer for biology and chemistry to become senior education officer of biology, chemistry, and marine studies, and the senior education officer for elementary science to become senior education officer for elementary science and marine studies, and the third one, the senior education officer for agricultural science to become senior education officer, agricultural science, marine studies. The proposal was accepted by the Prime Minister. It was actually approved by not the Prime Minister, but the Minister himself in 2011. So after that, on the 25th of August 2010, I communicated with Dr. Choeli Vetayaki. Unfortunately, the gentleman is not here. I hope he's out there in Fiji viewing this conference. I was hoping that he would come, but unfortunately he didn't make it. I discussed with Professor the possibility of getting a consultant, and the Professor said that he would look into it, and the next step was to get his boss, Dr. Angela, and Dr. Angela actually said that he would like us to work together and to be able to get it as a reality. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are at the moment. We haven't taken any further step than that, because we wanted a consultant to come, but because of, like Dr. Costello said, a lot of things that happen is determined by who gives the money, like UNESCO project that they had. And once the project is done, then it stops. So we were looking for a project, and the model that we were going to use, I was, for the last 2 years, a manager of one particular project called financial literacy. That will be completed this year, and it's a big project. The reality in Fiji is that the government of the day at the moment, they are really pushing us to do a lot more improvements to the system. Those of you who know the political situation in Fiji, 2014, they are promising to get us back into democracy. So they're doing, in my view, they are doing a pretty good job. So the next step, ladies and gentlemen, will be I will take relevant resources from IPMEN Chile conference back to the vocational marine studies back in the island of Kandavu. We need to share that's happening. So whatever resource I got out of the ocean literacy, I will listen to Dr. Costello's lecture this morning. It was fascinating. Some of the things will be taken back and from the other resources that will be given to Kandawu Bunisia Secondary School. And a report will be written and submitted to the Ministry of Education. And from there, we will move on. Before I end, I would like to recognize the tremendous work of marine studies by the University of the South Pacific, and in particular, Dr. Joel Vitayaki. I was asked this morning breakfast, how's Ron Vabe and Semi Mel, those of you who were there in the 2010 conference back in Fiji. They're very well, they're doing very well. In fact, Dr. Joel Vitayaki is the main pusher and mover of marine studies in Fiji and the South Pacific Islands. So those of you who are new, you can look through the website of School of Marine Studies, University of the South Pacific, to get some of the things that's happening in Fiji and for the South Pacific in terms of marine studies. So to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we were told by Ambassador Gabriel that this discussion does not remain only in the PowerPoint but reaches reality. That is the reality that we've reached so far. And from here, we will not give up. We will move on in the move to look after the sea and the resources of the sea. Because I believe the sea is where, particularly for an island as small as Fiji, right in the middle of the ocean, where our survival is and where our future is. And of course, Ambassador was saying that in future we have not a big ocean, but a little ocean and many progress. So I hope that will happen soon. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss Fiji's progress.
And now, I would like to invite now Mr. Peter Tadenham from the College of Exploration and the National Marine Educators Association. Mr. Peter Tadenham is a corporate and educational manager. Since 1991, he has been working with colleagues and partners to build the College of Exploration as a new way of learning and living. For the past 10 years, he has been developing internet and human networks that facilitate learning about the oceans. So please, welcome. And Silvia.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I thought I'd spend a little time talking about my engagement with ocean literacy and then some dreams about the future in concert with the theme of the conference. I'm not an ocean scientist or a marine biologist. I have a very varied career, but I'm very pleased at the moment to be chair of the International Committee for the National Marine Educators Association. And as such, we have been working to promote learning about the ocean on an international scale. And with the support of the National Marine Educators Association, we're helping this kind of network to move. It's been an exciting journey in a way. I have been lucky or had the opportunity to go to the previous IPMEN conferences, at least in Honolulu in Australia, and the one in Fiji vicariously using the internet, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. If you haven't seen this, I'm always like the opportunity to promote the work that has been done over the past 10 years to create this ocean literacy brochure and this work. And it has been a collaborative and open work from the beginning. The value of open participation, conversation, and communication are vital to ensure ownership in ideas and to take them on. And I think that is one of the things that has occurred with this work on ocean literacy. When this was started, we came up with a definition, has been stated earlier, and 7 principles and 44 concepts. That then led to the development of a whole scope and sequence, which is used now in the K through 12 education community, and that now has about 700 little learning pieces that have been described sequentially and progressively from kindergarten to grade 12. You can find all this information on the oceanliteracy.net website. We would like, of course, to have that website in many languages, and Spanish would be probably the most logical one to do that. So I invite your participation to help us to translate and to extend the reach on that. In that regard, I'm pleased to say that a few weeks ago had the privilege of speaking as a keynote at the first Ocean Literacy Conference in Europe, in Bruges, Belgium, where over 120 ocean scientists and ocean educators, marine scientists, marine educators from Europe met in Bruges to begin a discussion, a conversation about ocean literacy in Europe. And obviously many challenges, a broad geographic area, many, many languages, different cultures. So I find it very interesting to explore how we develop our understanding and relation to the sea or to the ocean or to marine topics. And as an example, the word literacy, ocean literacy in the United States has meaning, and ocean literacy to some extent they have picked up in Europe. But we have discussed the concept in terms of the Spanish language and have come up with, I think it's alfabetismo, is that correct? And oceanográfico is another idea, or cultura, to express this idea of expanse. And for example, our friends in Portugal have embraced the idea of ocean literacy and have gone through a similar participative process in Portugal for them to help define what it means for Portugal and the Portuguese education system, but they have called it knowing the ocean. That is their term. So however you want to express it, the goal is to get the ocean into our educational lives. I've just been speaking with a number of folks at the break here about how perhaps in Chile it may be easier to get the marine topics into the curriculum. But I know it's very difficult in the United States, for example, to get marine topics into the curriculum at all, at any level. And indeed, even now, there is a rewrite of the national next generation science standards, and we have a small committee that has been working to ensure that the marine and ocean topics are in those standards. And yet, the first presentation for review was exceedingly terrestrially based. It was all about the land. And there was even one statement in there that said, all animals need air to live. So we have to be very attentive. So that's my piece on ocean literacy. We're now moving, hopefully, into a more global effort to have a ocean literate global program. And IPMEN is a part of that process. I'd also like to reinforce now perhaps the participation through social media and the internet. From the outset, I've always believed we should have as much participation beyond the boundaries of a room like this, and to have as much engagement from afar as possible. And we did that in Honolulu and in Fiji and in Australia. And all of the presentations are up online, so if you wish to see the history of this, you can do that. And we are now live webcasting this meeting, and we will do our very best to continue to live webcast that this whole conference for the next week from the university this afternoon, and from our conference center tomorrow, and on Wednesday from the meeting we're having in Koyaki. And then we will attempt to really push some boundaries and attempt to do some webcasting and live reporting on the road from Koyaki to Coletta Totel. And then when we get to Coletta Totel, we'll even try to do something, some webcasting from there if possible, or certainly some quick updating from videos and some little snippets. What I would say, with us now all with cameras and video, and I'll talk about this tomorrow a little more, is can we think how it is educative? If you're taking a picture or making a movie, you know, think about how someone who's reading it can learn from that. So that is my introduction. I look forward to some questions and some discussion, because I think discussion is where we learn the most. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, I would like to invite now Dr. Judy Connor from Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. Judy Connor earned her PhD from the University of California at Berkeley with research conducted at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama. Dr. Connor has taught marine botany at Stanford University and the University of California. At the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, she serves on the senior management team, directing the Institute websites, public information, technology transfer, and a summer intern program for teachers and college students. She and her team provide technical support for research and development projects and collaborate with the Monterey Bay Aquarium on a variety of educational projects. Please, Dr. Yeah, you're welcome.
Estoy muy feliz de estar aquí con ustedes, and thank you for this opportunity. I can remember, you know, hearing Juan Carlos talk today really took me back to how I got into marine education. When I started my postdoc at Stanford University's field station, that was the weekend that the Monterey Bay Aquarium opened. And there wasn't enough parking, so you couldn't get into town. It was complete gridlock. It was interesting because prior to that, Dave Packard had listened to his two daughters who had been marine biology students in Monterey Bay, and they said, you know, with the canneries going out of business, this is a great opportunity to develop an aquarium, a public aquarium for public education. And so he did some surveys and decided that with San Francisco about 100 miles away, they would probably get perhaps as many as 1 million visitors a year to an aquarium in Monterey. And so David and Lucille Packard paid for the building of the Monterey Bay Aquarium with the idea that it would be self-sustaining, that they would bring in enough money at the door that they would pay for the 50 people that they thought it would take to keep the aquarium running. And so it was interesting for me because in that time period when I ended my postdoc at Stanford, I accepted a job at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and I was developing curriculum materials for teachers, writing books, similar to what Juan Carlos had described his books here. And my last book, which was Jelly's Living Art, talked about the biology and art, and included poems by Neruda in Spanish and English. How many of you have been to the Monterey Bay Aquarium? Fantastic. Well, now they're doing the exhibits in Spanish and English, and we're trying to produce our education materials also in Spanish and English. After a few years, David Packard got the idea that perhaps he could make a change in bringing technology to ocean science, and he proposed that they build part of the Monterey Bay Aquarium into a research institute. But the board of the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Packard family didn't agree, and David Packard wasn't somebody that you said no to. So he started a second nonprofit, a sister organization to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which he called the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. Even though we're 30 miles apart, we're sister organizations, and so we do try to help each other out with projects. Currently, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, their goal is public education and K-12, and we support them however we can in fulfilling their mission. Our primary mission is to develop new technology to answer important ocean science questions. So we're really interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. But marine biology is a great hook for getting young people interested, and so we're able to use our robotic submersibles to take high-definition videos deep in our canyon just offshore, and we're seeing such amazing things that often the images we get can stimulate interest in the other things that we're doing. For example, when we came across the barrel eye, which is this small little deep sea fish that was not well studied, seeing it in its own environment with the robotic sub, we were able to see that it had it had a transparent forehead and tubular eyes that looked up through this transparent shield. And no one had ever seen that it actually had that, because if you collect it in nets from the deep sea, when it comes up to the surface, that part has been torn off. And so following it with the sub and seeing how the eyes worked, it's looking up until it sees prey, and then as it moves its mouth up, it moves its eyes forward. I mean, unbelievably weird animals. And so when we put that little segment on YouTube, when we published the scientific paper, I can remember within 24 hours, I was watching it go around the world. And you could see, okay, we put it on in the afternoon, we put it on the YouTube channel, and it went around, you could see it in the evening go through India, and then through Europe. And the next morning when I came in, it had had 1 million hits, people watching that video. And I promise you, I didn't watch more than 550,000 of them. So here's an opportunity for us to help Chile. If you look at Juan Carlos's initials and my initials, you can see there's a nice symmetry. And California is so much like Chile in so many ways that here's an opportunity to work together to help bring marine education to Chile, and particularly his efforts, which I totally admire. Look forward to more of our discussion shortly. Thank you.
And I would like to invite again Dr. Juan Carlos Castilla. Please, we already know him from before. Okay, welcome.
I wasn't prepared to talk. I talk too much already. Just reinforce that it is tremendous possibility to interchange experiences. JC doesn't know that we've been thinking on the Bari laboratory for a long time. If we're able to develop these ideas in Las Cruces, as I said, you know, we got that canyon there, and the canyon has been unexplored. So there's tremendous possibility from the scientific point of view, and at the same time from the educational point of view. And we would like to see those similar situations around the world and trying to cooperate. And in this case, you know, would be really amazing. I know people in your lab, you know that. I know Francisco Chavez and other people And we have thought that if the Packard Foundation, help us to give this big step, the obvious collaboration will be with the Monterey Aquarium, in some way. But at the same time, from the scientific point of view, it seems to me that both things need to go together. It's much easier to communicate science when you're working in science, not just reading books, but actively working in science. And I think that's the experience of the Monterey. We're going to be tiny little experience, but it's obvious. And I didn't know, Judith until this conference. So this is a plus for me. I know people there, but I know. So this is a tremendous opportunity. And the other thing that I'd like to reinforce is that I said before, but I think it's very important that in order to develop marine literacy or marine education or whatever, we have learned over the last 20 years that you have to synthesize, one idea or two ideas and capture the imagination of people. And you can let them know a lot of things, but you have to capture the imagination. And it took us 2 years to develop, Chile is sea, Chile is mar. It's simple, but you have to think about it. You have to capture how to capture the public and the students. So I think it can be done. We're working. We're going step by step, but I think it can be done. And Luis and myself are extremely excited, as we were discussing during the coffee break, that we have never in Chile been so close. We're sort of close. The Packard and the minister. We would like to engage the educational minister. We like to go step by step. The ideal will be to engage the educational minister, Minister of Education in this business. But, for different circumstances, he's the foreign minister, and we welcome that. It's no problem. So we've been discussing with Luis these strategies, and it seems to me that it would be better, to develop the idea and then engage minister and government and things like that, at least in Chile. I believe in things that, are working and then engage the administration. And then to develop, 2 or 3 slogans or whatever you like to call it, to capture the imagination. I think it's very powerful to indicate people that we're blind to the sea. That's simple. But we are blind to the sea. We just see the surface. Those sort of things, are very, 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 keep blind. I'm not blind. Yeah, you're blind. You're not seeing more than 0.00001% of the sea every day. And if you capture that, particularly with children, is very interesting. I wasn't prepared, but this meeting, helped me to meet a lot of you, and particularly Judy, because we have the Bari in our mind for many, many years. Thank you.
And now is open for questions from the public. If someone wants, please, is a microphone, please.
Hola. Is it on? Is it on? No.
Gracias. My name is Alida Ortiz, and I come from Puerto Rico, and we are also blind to the sea. Very, very blind. And I would like to have 2 questions. One is to Mr. Drova. Is your effort finished in a legislation? Do you have to legislate to include marine education or marine topics in the curriculum?
Thank you. No, not necessarily. What we really need was the approval of the minister, but and that's been given. So the fact that the governor of the day is giving, there are so many new things that they want us to do, including the abolition of those 3 exams. Mm-hmm. That's preventing us from immediately going into implementation. Okay. That's all. The cabinet paper that was supposed to be written is just for the information of cabinet.
Okay, and then does it change if the minister changes?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's quite possible. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going now to Mr. Tudenham, because we do have that difficulty of inserting marine topics in the curriculum. And we have been working on that for nearly 30 years. But then our problem is that it is not in the standards. It will change if every time that the Secretary of the Department of Education changes with political moves of any kind, or whenever you have a new fashion that has to impact the curriculum. And one of my dreams is that it is probably necessary to impact teacher preparation, not necessarily teacher in service. So if we can direct many of the efforts to those 4 or 5 years that the person is preparing to be a teacher, and all they get is terrestrial ecology, and they know the rainforest in and out, but they never get to the water, not even the sea, even the rivers. So we have, like that disconnect with the water world, that we admire it so much in movies and in fantasies, in mythology, but not in education. So probably if we get these ocean literacy principles to the teacher preparation, and not only science, because many times I am a scientist myself, and we find that we're too narrow in the way we look at. Right now, so we know a lot about the coral reef, we know a lot about the ecosystems, but we know very little about the relationship between that human being and the ecosystem, because we don't involve the social studies, we don't involve the history, we don't involve planners in that type of education. So I think that we should try teacher preparation.
Yes, of course. I absolutely agree. Teacher preparation is a crucial part of this across all disciplines. When we started the ocean literacy work, it was specifically to use what existed in terms of the science standards and develop ocean topics to meet science standards. So it has been born out of science, but I am personally very keen that we see ocean literacy encompass and be more of the totality of life in terms of music and art and poetry and passion. We need, however, it is not only teacher preparation, it is a whole societal, global change in a mindset. That is the big idea, that is the huge idea of the change in our relation with people moving to cities. As we see in Santiago, there is concrete after concrete apartment buildings. People are being removed from nature. This is a profound problem for our humanity and for our civilization. And it's what keeps me going, because I think we need to have the ocean, it's 70%, right? 70% of the surface of the earth. It needs to be central to every child's experience in some way. That is our grand challenge. So yes, teacher preparation. But I stress, it's not only through government, through policies, and then educational legislation, and then procedures. That is very important. But it is also the spirit of the people who understand that change is needed. This group here represents, a spirit of change that are committed. I like to think of top down, bottom up, and sideways in. That's my theory. Anyway, thank you.
Are there any more questions? Someone else? Then we move on to the cultural welcoming. Oh, excuse me, to the second round. Okay, yes. Then you have time to.
Hello? See? I'd like to get into your question. We're privileged in Chile, I'm not sure about recent legislation, but so far I've been studying before, in the sense that I think this is the case right now, but it was the case, 5 years ago. There's not a lot of curriculum flexibility, but there is 5 or 10% that it can be used in every single school to teach, local things. That's there. So from that point of view, it's pretty flexible, but you can develop, lectures and experiments and things like that. It's been done because, people in the mountains have different interests than people down the sea and things like that. So in Chile, it shouldn't be very difficult, to introduce an idea. What we need, is a protocol and some examples. And then, of course, we have to teach, let the teachers know about it. And the earliest, the better. University will be better. But in Chile, it shouldn't be very difficult from that point of view. Moreover, in Chile, education is decentralized. So it's in the hands of the counties. Every county in Chile, 400 counties, run their own schools. There's a problem because there are rich countries and poor counties, so it's a problem. So within a backbone, sort of curriculum, there are possibilities we call them municipalities. It's a possibility for the municipalities to introduce, shall we call it local or special subject of interest. So there's some flexibility there. Shouldn't be a problem here.
Yeah, let me just pick up on that and talk about local. I mean, absolutely right. And that's our challenge, okay? How do you make the ocean relevant to an inner city child, wherever, or indeed someone in the mountains, someone in a rural, wherever. And so we need to have a program for every child that starts with, you need to understand your connection to the ocean, to the sea, and to the world here, wherever you are, and the effects it has. And so that's our challenge, is to come up with those ideas and scopes of sequence and lesson plans and make it easy. And I think the answer starts with water. That's the universal.
Oops, I have my wire attached still. That's okay. Thank you all for your comments. I'm Judy Lemus from University of Hawaii, and Luis and I were talking at the break, and he mentioned something that I just started thinking about again, in this idea of a regional project that we in IPMEN can sort of get behind, and I was taking in Juan Carlos's idea about Chile es mar, Chile is sea. Well, in fact, actually, in Hawaii, we have a Center for Ocean Sciences Education Excellence, and we took on the perspective that we are islands not separated by the sea, but connected by the sea. Sea is not a separation for us, but it's actually a connection. And so perhaps we can start thinking about this idea of we are the sea, life is sea, and take that as a message that we can all, I think if we continue to repeat the same message over and over in something that's very engaging, something that people can really perhaps grab onto, then all of us, collectively can make a much better impact than we each are doing individually. So just food for thought, not really a question, sorry.
I just wanted to add, my name's Natalie Davey from Australia, and I've been working just the last 10 years in marine education without a scientific background, from a fine arts background, but it brought me to the point of being involved in building a boat to get engaged with the oceans due to a deep concern with the state of the oceans. And but one thing we haven't mentioned, and I do a lot of work with Aboriginal elders and integrating traditional knowledge with science, and it's one thing we haven't really mentioned. And I did speak to a couple of the elders that I work with that I was coming here, and they were saying, oh, we should be there too, and they should be. And I really hope by the time we get to Japan, that I will be able to be here and that they can represent for themselves the importance of the integration of these knowledge systems within Western scientific systems of knowing. But I've just seen over the time of working on the boat, and part of the structure of our programs is to have scientists on board, Aboriginal elders, children who are learning and being engaged and asking questions. And a key theme of a lot of the discussions that are coming up are around the importance of collaboration and also the reality of the need for multidisciplinary approaches to gaining deeper understanding of the oceans themselves, but also in the way we communicate the importance of the oceans to the broader public. So I suppose I'm also making a statement, but also just the importance of traditional knowledge within the context of what we're trying to do today and also in our collaborative ventures. So, and I also want to thank all the speakers so far. It's been absolutely wonderful to be here and listen to you all. Thank you.
I have to agree with you. I think the bringing in traditional knowledge is just such a nice addition to scientific knowledge, and it's really good for the next generation to be aware of both too. I think in Alaska, the marine science organizations are pretty successful at doing that, and I think we can build on that.
Okay, another experience in Chile, you know, let me go back to we're blind to the sea. The ones who are less blind are the divers. That's very interesting. They have a lot of local ecological knowledge, and they see things there. I mean, you can use robotics and whatever, you know, but that's for developing countries and things like that. But we have learned in Chile, you know, the subsector of the divers. We can use that tremendously to communicate things to other fishers. I don't want to say fishermen. I say fishers, you know. Once again, you know, we are blind to the sea. It has taken us in Chile to communicate more with the divers, and we got, you know, 15,000 divers in Chile. I mean, commercial divers. I'm not talking about, you know, commercial. 15,000, 14,000 divers. And that's tremendous possibility for us and them to communicate to other fishers first. What is there? Because we don't have high-tech stuff here. So, you know, when we think about fishers, you know, there are different kind of fishers. And divers are a very powerful way to communicate things to other fishes. That's one thing. Because they see the bottom of the sea. That's very important to thinking the idea we're blind, you know, very important. And the other thing is that we have the experience in Chile. I was talking to somebody during the coffee break that based in our scientific experience in Las Cruces, 1 kilometer of coastline. Yes, 1 kilometer of coastline. We've been able to develop in Chile management and exploitation coastal areas in the hands of artisanal communities. That's done. That's in the law. You know, it took us 20 years to do that. And now we have, so there's 700 management and exploitation areas in the hands of 700 communities in Chile. Exclusive rights over small, it's a garden, you know, it's a sea garden, over, you know, 100 square hectares or 50 hectares or whatever. And that's in the law, that's legal. And now we have discovered that biodiversity inside those areas is greater than in the open access areas. The law was not, you know, we didn't think when we prepared the law, you know, about biodiversity. We thought about management. How do sustainability of the resources. But now biodiversity has increased inside those. So that's the beauty, because you got people. People is the key. I mean, you don't engage people, forget about it. People, management in those areas and conservation of biodiversity, that's a beauty. That's an absolute beauty. Even you can think now in offsetting those biodiversity assets. Convince some entrepreneur, why don't you invest here? These guys are taking care of the areas, and they're prepared to, you can make progress. You have to engage people. One thing, I wouldn't disagree with you, but I don't agree 100%. When we think in nature, we think in nature and think nature and human beings. Nature doesn't exist without human beings. So I would like to think in socio-ecological system more than in ecological and social system. What is going there is social ecological system, even in our city and everywhere. So we have to face this problem thinking that it's a social ecological combination and that we're part of nature. Nature is not what is there, in Tortel, very isolated and far away. That's part of nature, and Santiago is part of nature. But if you think in the social ecological approach, you think people need to be engaged in Tortel and in Santiago. But if you trying to take, nature here and people here and cities here, I don't think we're going to get there. So that will be different strategies to convince those people. That's sure. And it's more difficult, in Santiago, more difficult in Santiago than in Tortel because people depend in Tortel about the city, so it will be easy. But I like to think in nature with people, not without people. It probably is not what you meant, but I would like to think in social ecological system. How do you solve problems in social ecological system? And in that sense, the past 30 years, the idea of marine parks has been, to put those marine parks as far away as possible, far away from people. I think the challenge is that the other way around. Put it as close as possible to people. Those are needed. But, the real challenge is to manage and conserve marine resources and ecosystem, whatever, close to the people. The other are easy to conserve, far away. Those are needed. But the most challenging ones are the ones close to people. And we have to learn those lessons. That was my reflection.
Can I just sort of clarify my thought on nature? When language produces boundaries by definition, in a thought you make a distinction. And you have just talked about social ecological systems. Well, I would argue we should be talking about maybe socio-technical, ecological systems perhaps as well, because technology is one of the issues. And I agree, I don't wish to say that there is nature and there is us, but it is how do you reignite our awareness of our natural being as a part of a large system that we're all interacting with. And that's a consciousness raising issue somehow. So
details and a discussion on this. I teach ethics, environmental ethics at the university. That's my latest, and yeah, I mean, if you look ethics, environmental ethics, I was born in the United States in the early 18,000. In that case, was a sort of patriotism, I mean, we have to save this. My God, the cities are needed here, in the Sarrera Salon, 400 years ago, there was trees. The river is there. The river was here, and there were trees. And now it's a building, and we're meeting here. This is part of...
yeah, that's what I think I was saying, is that river now is a concrete channel.
Yeah.
There's no understanding that is a river. It's just water flowing on a concrete channel.
Yeah.
That is my kind of sense of disconnect.
Yeah.
I just this is probably more of a comment than a question too. Just listening to the discussion, in Hawaii there is a revival of the Ahamoku system, which was the traditional system of management, and it was based on traditional contours of the land and sea that went from the mountain out into the ocean. And actually the legislature passed a bill to have a committee formed to look at that and how to revive that. And the committee came up with 5 pillars that they were based on. And I know we're we're into international and regional education, but building on what Natalie's saying about the indigenous and the local, is that on those pillars, in those geographic boundaries that are place-based, the knowledge is generational, place-based, and the education, the adaptive management should also be local on that area. So it's great to hear that you have the communities managing their ocean resources, and I just wanted to talk about that. Thank you.
It seems to me, well, I'm not saying that, perhaps it's easier, you know, to get there, and when you get seagoing cultures. In islands, there's seagoing culture. Even Easter Island, you know, the island I know most. You know. It's a lot of seagoing culture. It's there. It's part of, but you know, in cities and in places like Santiago, that culture is not there any longer. So that's a different challenge. You have to face those challenges, you know, not use exactly the same tools. I keep saying, you know, in seagoing cultures, particularly in islands, you know, stuff is there, you know, and probably it's been lost, and you have to recuperate something. And probably you don't need to recuperate, it's there. But in cities, you know, and inland places, it's nothing you have to recuperate. You have to ignite people, you know, to think about it. And for that, you have to develop new strategies. I think that's my experience.
Well, so before we move on to the cultural welcoming, I would like to invite you in 1 minute, each of you, to give the last statement about your dreams regarding marine education, please. I don't know who starts. You should. Yes, 1 minute.
All right, I'll go for 1 minute. Let's see if I can do a 1 minute. I mean, what a great morning, great way to think about the whole experience that we're here with the Pacific, and many themes that we've picked up on, and to sort of reiterate sustainability, aquaculture, reaching out, indigenous population, traditional knowledge, reigniting passion, reigniting connection to local places, using technology to include, to engage people in conversations locally and nationally, to talk about local strengths, to make it real for people, make it a dream, make it reality, my lived reality. I think these are the grand challenges. That's why I'm engaged, and I love it that we're here and we're having this experience. That's a minute.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, looking forward to meeting with some of the teachers this afternoon, and just thinking about, you know, what the success of the institutions that have made a difference to my life and my community, and it's public-private partnerships. And so looking at the possibility of Santiago businessmen who want to have a place for tourism and bring in more people. You know, this is the perfect place for an aquarium. And then the education institution down by the shore. I mean, that's the perfect combination, and we should look at who are the people who care about this community, who want to contribute their funds to make this a reality.
Very, very simple, 3 words. It can be done. I think close to Obama. I think it can be done. You know, you don't need more than that. You know, I think that it can be done. It's sometimes going to be a little bit more difficult, but it can be done, I will add, in developing countries, because there's a lot of experience in the developed world, but it can be done in developing countries, and we do not need a lot of money. We need a lot of enthusiasm, you know, things like that. Basically, that it can be done.
In my mind, it's now being reinforced the concept that Dr. Castillo said the sea, Chile is the sea, and then the sea connects us, not separates us. And back in the Pacific, there is a professor called, late Professor Apeli Aofa, who said, the Sea of Islands. It just shows the importance of the sea. And thank you, Dr. Castillo, for the concept of it can be done. It will be done. Thank you.
Well, and now we all are invited to go to the hall, to the cultural welcoming and the cocktail. So please, thank you.